All right, g'day, hey, g'day, hi, and welcome from Brutus, my big bad Dodge snow beast. Got to deal with this door. One of the first projects I got. I just popped the hood. Something I was saying in some of the other videos with all the different Dodge parts you can get, accessories. So you can see this hood's not in that bad of shape. But like most of this one you got to push it all the way up. Those shocks are starting to go. This is the big, bad, brutal Hemi, whatever. It's not hard to work on these, but you can see you need this step, right? This is a huge bumper. So you need to, like, they went for the mini rig look for it. So I'll have to familiarize myself with this a little bit more. The big bad Dodge. So this thing does have a Leaky power steering hose. I believe it is the return hose, which I'm hoping it is, because it's just a clamp on that, and that should be an easy fix. One of the things about the power steering hoses is that usually, I was just at the garage over there at the garage, and the guy was saying, yeah, usually you end up destroying them trying to take them off, so it's better just to buy new ones. That's the power steering fluid holder right there. I got to really get into this. Let's talk about this big beast of an engine. I mean, it comes right to the top of the... I'll compare the Ford engine 4.6 to this thing in a future video, but for now I'll just do this. So Dodge Magnum Hemi 5.7 V8 liter. So what the heck is a Hemi in the first place? A lot of people, let's start with that. First off, Hemi is short for hemispherical. So inside the head port where the spark plug comes in, it started out on a test bed airplane of a P-47. They put this, I think it was a horizontally opposed V24 engine, or whatever it was, how many cylinders it was, and they sculpted out the inside of the head to allow for more air and combustion for high altitude of fighter planes at the time, prop driven fighter planes at the time. Now the Hemi goes way back to about the early 1900s, like around the 1920s, but this is the first one to really have it. And then what Dodge started to use it, other companies were using it, Dodge started to use it, but that's what the Hemi is basically you get more air combustion. Now, what makes these engines so grunty is a few things. Number one, they're big. You can go from 4.2 liter engine or something like that up to this 5.7 or whatever it is, the 4 point whatever. Now, a lot of people say stay away from the 4.2 liter Hemis. They were just riddled with problems. These ones, they hold up fairly well. They're not so bad. Depends on how many burnouts people have done with them. They're a big Hemi. They do produce a lot of power, torque, and stuff like that. We'll get into some numbers approximate in a little bit. But one of the big things about this truck engine, another reason why it produces, it's such a hot engine, so to speak, is that basically it takes race car technology from yesteryear, so to speak, and what it has done is taken your regular V8, okay, which is still a push rod engine, okay, so you have a cam on this side, a cam on that side, a crank, and then you got push rods that open and close each valve with tappets and rockers. So basically farm tractor technology, right? Well, gas powered farm tractor, not diesel, but anyway, well, even the diesels, yeah. But then what they did is they put 2 spark plugs per cylinder. So in other words, that's what gives you that hot boost of combustion, which creates a lot more compression, better atomization of the fuel air ratio, so it burns better because of the hot spark. You have 2 sparks, which then, like I say, gives you more of everything. But it's also there's 16 plugs in there, so that's a bit of a pain too, and very costly. So this engine, I think, produces, I heard a couple of numbers, between 240 and 340 horsepower. I believe it's around the 340 horsepower, with about 300 foot-pounds, give or take, of torque. The bigger versions of this can get really ridiculous, up into 700-800 horsepower, like the Hellcats and stuff like that. But they're also getting bigger in displacements. So the 5.7 5.7. 5.7 is pretty much just in the Ram trucks and some of the Dodge Challengers, basically, and Chargers and stuff like that. I guess the Dodge Magnum station wagons as well. So they're basically in that kind of stuff. One thing that everybody tells me about the Dodges, and I can kind of see what they're talking about, is that they're fairly easy to work on in comparison to, say, the Fords. They got a lot more plastic inside the Fords, stuff like that. But of this generation, I would say this is probably just as easy to work on as the Ford, and the tight spots are probably about the same, you know, back in there where, you know, where you can't reach back in there, same on the other truck. The other nice thing is parts are readily available because there's a lot of these trucks out there. In fact, there's so many parts that if you have a really good engine and the body's kind of like in this kind of shape, if I find a truck with a blown engine and the truck is good, you know, roughly the same year, I can get a newer truck and just take this engine and put it in it. That engine itself is also, you know, going to be worth a lot of money. So, you know, if it's a running engine, people don't want it. This does have the Hemi Tick, the classic Hemi Tick. It's an exhaust leak on this one. So that said, this is my winter beater. And again, I paid little enough for it that parting this thing out is going to make me money if I get to that. I hope not, because I do like the truck. And I know the guy that had it, and, you know, he worked it. He worked the hell out of it, but, you know, he didn't do brake stands and stuff like that with it. That's not what he bought it for. He took fairly good care of it for what it was. It's just when you work a truck, it ends up like this. So yeah, that's what we got for a power plant in this thing. Will I do anything to it? Well, right now I'm going to say no, because I just bought it, right? This conversation this time next year might be a totally different conversation. This truck, you can get stupid with these engines, like really stupid. Superchargers, you name it, you know. And the 5.7 is a good engine, and you see people turning these things into 1,000 horsepower brutes. I mean, like, it's a good platform to start with. Common problems with these engines, the Hemi Tick, meaning what happens is the oiling system. There's two Hemi Ticks. The one that's less problematic is the head bolts, or the studs on the exhaust headers basically break, and then you get an air leak, and then you get a tick, and then it eventually goes away as it warms up after, and this does it. So it's pretty much the exhaust leak. The other one is a little more serious, the internal one. It's where when you're idling for long periods of time, there's not adequate oiling, and on a tappet that pushes the push rod, there's a roller, and those rollers heat up, and they heat up on the cam, and they wear out the cam, and then of course you get lifter failure. When you get lifter failure, it basically grinds down the cam. Then you're talking about, you know, $3,000 to get them all switched out if you can't do it yourself. And this, some engines you don't need an engine crane for. This one you would need an engine crane for, definitely. This is a big beast of an engine, but everything's all in the front. Starter, what you call pumps, all that stuff. It's all there, you know. Like it's relatively easy to work on. I mean, you can move stuff out of the way so it's like a mini tractor trailer, like a mini rig look up. But they also built these trucks pretty heavy, pretty solid, big frame on them. I still got some paint left on this frame, so that's good. Other problems with these engines that were common for this year was mainly those two main things. The other one is the roll no start, but that's usually a fuel pump problem with these things. So if you get there and it just rolls, a typical Dodge. Like when I was a kid in the 70s, you could almost tell if it was a Dodge product trying to start up. If it was a Ford, it was just like boom, way to go. You know what I mean? If it was a Chevy, it was like boom. If it was a GMC, it was like boom. If it was a Dodge, if you're from the 70s, you know this sounds. You know, that really fast kind of high rolling starter sound. Legendary for Dodge products. I don't know about a lot of recalls on these. I do know some of the other problems that were common was the heater exchanger in the back gets clogged. So when you get like no heat, you either got to replace it or just clean it out. These air hoses crack and it makes for funky idling and starting, stuff like that. So there is common problems with these trucks, but most of it is a maintenance problem rather than an actual parts problem. Some of it is a parts problem. The dashes, this one actually has a good dash. Just this dash alone would probably, if somebody was restoring one of these things to restore it, that dash is probably worth what I paid for the truck for somebody, you know, just because it's not cracked. They were notorious for whatever they did with the dash. It wasn't good plastic, and they'd sun rot and they just dry out. And you'll find almost all these trucks with like cracked up and busted up dashes. That's why. What else? There's a few other things, but we'll get into that as I go. But anyway, I'll start showing the quirks and quirks of this thing.